Welcome. I'm so glad you made it here. I know the weather is not conducive to wanting to go out, but I'm glad you made it here today. My name is Amy. I am your host for our Backyard Edibles program. I have George here from the Mount. He is our agricultural professor that's going to guide us through different native plants that are edible, and we're going to use them in mocktails, and he is here to answer questions and to tell us a little bit more about why native plants are so important for our environment. After his talk, we're going to make some mocktails and some tea with some of our native plants and our native foods. It's not apple cider season right now, but I did manage to find some apple cider at the grocery store. And from there, we're going to go outside and we're going to pot our plants that George brought us from his backyard garden. Sound good? All right,
Sweet.
Let's do this. I'm going to give this mic to George, and he's going to get us started.
All right, I actually got one right here.
Yes, that's right. I'm going to give this to my son then.
Yeah, cool. All right, cool. So thanks everybody for coming. I love talking about this stuff. And like Amy was saying, I teach at Mount Wachusett, and I've been there for about 3 years. And if you haven't been by there, or you guys went today, but if you've noticed around the greenhouse, there's some changes. So we've really expanded the growing area, and we've actually put in an orchard. And so we have apples and plums and cherries and peaches and things like that. But then we also have set aside some of the garden space for like native to New England plants. And the reason why we do that is because they're really important, because the plants themselves support pollinators and other really good insects. And so this is just, I brought some handouts, just some kind of fun material on why insects are really important. And what we can do as kind of like ecological gardeners to support our insects. Yep, and so they're really important because, especially as growing food at the community college, we really need a lot of insects to do a lot of good work for us. So like bumblebees, right? They're really important for pollination. And most of our food, or 2/3 of our food, come from insect pollinated plants, like squashes. So has anybody ever tried to grow a squash before, or like a pumpkin? Mm-hmm. So have you noticed the bees that go into the flowers? So those are actually called squash bees because they've been like adapted to just pollinate squash plants for like thousands of years. So if you don't have squash bees, you won't really have squash. So in order to support the pollinators that we need for the plants, we need the specific plants that they like to eat or grow on. So how about the monarch butterfly? Does everybody know the monarch butterfly? So what is the one plant that the caterpillars of monarchs can eat? Bam! So if you don't, milkweed. So if you don't have milkweed, there are no monarchs. Because just through thousands of years of being around each other for that long, they've specialized. And honestly, with the handouts that I gave, it really helps highlight that the insects that we have here that help us directly with agriculture have been adapted to being on very specific plants. And in addition to pollinators, how many people, anybody go like birding or watch birds? Or do you have a bird feeder? Yeah. They're kind of fun, right? Birds are really cool, and there's a bunch of different kinds of birds. And so the crazy thing that was figured out a couple years ago was that, for example, and in one of these handouts, the one that says insect declines, I'm sorry, it's kind of not great photocopy, but there's a picture of a black-capped chickadee. So does anybody know what a black-capped chickadee looks like? They're the bird that goes, and so those are a native bird. And those birds need at least 7,000 caterpillars to feed their young, the little chicks. And the only way that we have caterpillars are with the native plants that the butterflies and moths that live here have been around to eat, like the monarch caterpillar. So in order to support bird populations, you have to have the plants that support the caterpillars, which support the birds. And that is the summation of ecology. And we, as ecological gardeners, can do just that and benefit. And that's why we're here today. So here's a native mint. So pass that around, take a leaf off. I have a bunch of it. But so smell it, and it smells just like regular garden mint. Only this one is native to New England. So in addition to us benefiting from the deliciousness of mint and the great smell, insects will also eat it, but it won't overeat in your garden. So you can both share, which is really cool. And then another plant which we have outside as the plant, and we're going to repot those and take those home, is wintergreen. So these are 2 of the wintergreen leaves. And so that's another native plant that you can grow in your garden, and it, in return, supports some kind of butterfly or moth, or maybe another insect. And so sometimes we might think that insects are just like, ugh, kind of gross, and like, I don't want them near me. But they do all of the work in like our gardens and our forests that like we don't want to do, like decompose things, break things down, take the leaves and turn them into soil. And usually insects and little, like the little pill bugs, they're really important because that's like their job in the environment. What's it? Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so another name is wintergreen. And so there's a couple different names for that. And so that's another native plant that we can use to support our native insects. And another one, which is one of my favorite, is sugar maple. So this is maple syrup that I made with my little sugar shack in kind of my backyard. And so we're also going to use this as part of our mocktails and teas. But maples in the soft landings handout, I think highlights that there are certain species of grasses and ferns and wildflowers, but also trees that really support a lot of our butterflies and moths. So oak, willow, cherry, pines, and poplars, but even maples. So there's this super, super cute moth called a rosy maple moth, and it is pink. It's a pink moth. It is super, super cool. So when you get a chance, Google rosy maple moth, and it is pink and yellow. And those caterpillars only eat maples. So if you want rosy maple moths, you have to have maple trees, but not Norway maples. Norway maples are a common street tree, but they're from Norway, and the rosy maple moth is not from Norway. It's from here, and it has to have sugar maple, red maple, and silver maple. And so to support these like beautiful insects, we have to grow the native plants that they want to eat. And so that's what those handouts are really kind of highlighting. And those are the 3 plants that we're going to kind of use today to highlight that they're good for us and they're good for kind of ecology and the native insects that are growing. They want to be even in urban environments. So there's lots of people who grow these native plant gardens even in urban environments. Like if you live in downtown Gardner, pretty urban, you can still support these little cute buddies, which is pretty cool. And so I lived in Boston for a long time, and I kind of forced this on my parents, and at their house I grew a bunch of native plants, and you could see all these cute little insects and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what we're doing today. And then the other thing I just want to highlight is, so I mentioned it before, but I teach for the Regenerative Agriculture Certificate, and we do have a handout for that. It's in the back. And if you are interested, you can take one or a couple of the classes, and there's no prerequisites. You just have to apply to the school, and then you can do like super fun stuff with us in the greenhouse. And so the classes are kind of a full gamut of learning. All of them are focused on hands-on stuff like we're going to do today. So all of the classes are really like getting dirty, being outside in the woods and in the greenhouse and in the gardens. And how we have it set up is if like you've never taken a college class before, we have 1 credit classes, which is like super low stakes. Like you just really have to show up and then like hang out with me, and then we talk about like bugs and stuff. And so we've set it up that way, this certificate program, so that like if you've never taken a college class and you want to like just get your feet wet with it, take one of the 1 credit classes. And they're just kind of like fun, and it's kind of like we're hanging out and talking about cool stuff. The other cool thing about community college now in Massachusetts is it's free for everyone if you don't have a college degree. So if you don't have a college degree, you can go to college for free, any community college. So that's awesome. Like I went to community college when I started, well, when I was 30, but it wasn't free then, but I went to Bunker Hill in Boston. So I moved from Arizona back in with my parents. In Arizona, I was a wildland firefighter. But so I moved back in with my parents and I went to college, and it's so cool that it's free now. And I specifically want to teach at a community college, so I'm like wicked excited about this. Because this will hopefully get more students to hang out with us. And like, I love that. Like, that's why I'm here on a Sunday, because I love talking to people about this stuff. So one of the coolest things is community college is free for everyone now in the state of Massachusetts if you don't have a previous degree, which is awesome. So unfortunately, we couldn't get somebody from like the enrollment office here. So I only know like a little bit about it, but the #1 thing is you just can't have a previous degree, but everybody's invited to come to school now, which is super cool. And so that's one of those things, if that interests you, I'll try to answer your questions as best I can, but I'll probably have to direct you to somebody from the admissions office. We do have a card from Michelle, and she's really cool, and she's come to events with me before, and that's her job, is just to answer these questions. But so if that's something that interests you, like, we want you there.
Is it specific time? What's the year that's starting?
Yes, so the fall semester starts the first week of September. So the first week of September is the beginning of the fall semester. For example, the integrative pest management class, which is one of those 1 credit classes that's like super low stakes that I was telling you guys about, only goes for 8 weeks. So it's only the first 8 weeks of the semester. If you take a 4 or 3 credit class, like plant pathology, like all the things that want to eat our plants, we learn about those, and that is the full semester, and it goes really from the first week of September to like the 3rd-ish week of December. So it's like 15 weeks. So it's kind of a commitment, but that's why we have those low stakes 1 credit classes, like if you just want to try it out. And so the integrative pest management class is in the fall, but then in the spring, we teach 2 1 credit classes. One of them is called fruit production. So we learn how to like correctly prune and propagate apple trees and peach trees and plums. And that's taught in the first part of the spring semester. And then I teach a class called plant nutrients, or like plant nutrition. And we learn about like, if you look at a plant and it like looks like crap, we learn like maybe it's a nitrogen deficiency or something like that. So we learn about like how looking at a plant, you can be like, I think it's missing nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium. And that's taught in the second half of the spring semester. And so again, those are like the 1 credit, like low stakes courses. Yeah. Are there any questions about this college or the bugs or the native plants?
So you said this milkweed.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Is that moth or butterfly?
So that looks like a moth species, and I don't know which one, but that's a really cool picture. If you can't see that, it's a cool little fuzzy dude. And so that's another type of moth or butterfly, a Lepidoptera, that specializes on milkweed. Yeah. And so there's so many native plants that support specific like butterflies. So has anybody heard of a viceroy butterfly? It looks like a monarch, but it's not. But they're super similar in their like black and orange and white dots. Viceroys only eat aspen trees. And so if you want a viceroy in your yard, you got to grow aspen trees, as another example. Or the rosy maple moth, you got to have a maple tree. But so that's an awesome picture. Did you take that picture?
Yes.
That's super cool.
Can you have these native plants inside?
You can. Most of our native plants like to go through winter.
Really?
Yep. And so they want to be outside. So one of the coolest things is we, in New England, have a native cactus.
What?
Yes, a prickly pear cactus. And so you can have that, if cacti are something that you're into, we have a native cactus that grows in like the dunes of Cape Cod.
Oh, wow.
Super cool. So we can grow a native cactus. And it's cool, little prickly pear. And it was funny because my dad is really into cacti. And he was like, oh, cool, put that in. And we put it on a super sunny, like south-facing part of the house. And we put in one little pad. And it's like everywhere now. So we have to like cut it back a lot in order to like wrangle it in. But that's another cool thing. We're like, mind blown, didn't know that there was a native cactus.
And you can eat the
You can eat the fruit. You can eat the pads as well. You'd have to like burn off or cut off the spines. But yeah, so in the American Southwest, that was a native plant that the like native peoples would eat, or the pads of the prickly pear. And so you can eat the one that's from around here as well, and the red fruits. And so that's another edible. I know, pretty crazy. But yeah, so there's a native cactus, which is super cool. So if you like cacti, come by the greenhouse, and I'll give you some of the pads, and there you go. But, so yeah, there you go. Any other questions?
You mentioned bugs.
Yes.
You mentioned bugs. Bugs, right? I don't want to use any harmful pesticides.
Okay, yeah.
And but I do know that there's a lot of invasive bugs out there. But I would also like to get my harvest.
Yes.
What is a solution?
Yeah, so that is the class called Integrative Pest Management. And we learn about how to bring in the beneficial insects that eat or get rid of in another way the detrimental insects. So there's aphids all over those tower garden plants. So one of the coolest things, anybody heard of a ladybug?
Yeah.
They eat aphids. So you want to like bring in as many or ladybugs as you can. Another cool thing, has anybody ever seen, they look like a little bee called a sweat bee, and they like hover. Have you ever seen one of those? So that's actually not a bee, it's a fly, and it's called a hover fly, and they also eat aphids. So if you can like coax those to come into your garden, the little grubs that are like the immature hoverfly, sort of like a caterpillar, they eat aphids. So if you bring those in by having certain plants, you'll have natural enemies of your enemies.
Is there like some formula? I remember we had a ladybug infestation. Do you guys remember?
Oh, those are the Asiatic ladybugs that are technically non-native, but they still eat aphids.
Oh.
But they live in like your house in the winter.
Yeah. They were attacking us.
Yeah.
20-something years ago.
Yeah.
You stepped out, they would like land in your lemonade.
Yep.
It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
Tomato caterpillars,
Yes.
are they good for the environment? I know they get all the bugs get in and kill them.
Yeah. Yes. So they are not great for our tomato plants, but they are, in fact, really important nighttime pollinators. So the moth is a nighttime pollinator, so it's what I call the night shift. Because when we think about pollination, we think about like bees and stuff that are out like when we're awake. But pollination happens at night, and they pollinate things at night. So they are important, but what you can do is there's a lot of weedy nightshade plant families. You can actually take them off your tomato and put them on those. That comes down to plant ID though, and like learning which are the nightshade plants that you would rather have them eat than your tomatoes. But there are parasitoid wasps that eat the tomato hornworms from like the inside out. It's pretty crazy. So there's a wasp that lays eggs in the tomato hornworm, and then this like white cocoon comes shooting out of its like skin, and that's actually the pupation of the parasitoid wasp. It's like way sci-fi, but it's super cool.
That does sound like science fiction.
It's totally science fiction. You're like, what? And you like look at these caterpillars, and there's like all these white cocoons hanging off of it, and it's like, what is going on there? But if you keep that one around, then the parasitoid wasps hatch, and then they'll go to the other ones that you might not have seen eating your tomato plants. And that's that's like the main part of integrated pest management, where like there's always going to be pests, but if we can keep them at a managed level, then you'll be able to eat, and then they'll be able to eat as well. But that's why if we like coax in the good guys, then we'll be able to combat against the detrimental ones. And that really is ecological gardening. So we try to have a little patch of like messy area, because a lot of our native insects that are in fact good to combat against the detrimental insects, like a little messy patch of garden in addition to their native plants, like leaving the leaves, because a lot of those moths go into the leaves to pupate over winter. And then they come out in the spring, and then they can help us out. So like, if you have a patch of land in a garden, you can leave a little bit of it kind of messy, and that's where all of these beneficial insects will go to kind of hide out for the winter. And that's a good thing. Awesome questions. These are great. And I love the tomato hornworm one.
I have a lot of potato bugs. Is there anything I can do about that?
Ooh, like the Colorado potato beetle?
Yeah.
Oh, so the number one thing is like manual removal by just going and squishing them. Or there's something that you can use that is a naturally occurring bacteria. It's called BT, and you can actually, it's organic, and you can spray it on the leaves. And what it does is the bacteria, when the Colorado potato beetle eat it, it crystallizes their stomach, and they can't eat anymore, and then the beetles starve to death. And that's like an organic kind of pesticide. And so that's not a lot of things specifically eat potatoes. And there's the bacteria is specific to the order of beetles called Coleoptera. So it's called BTC. And then there's one called BTL for like Lepidoptera that only affect butterflies, or well, the detrimental Lepidoptera that are eating your crop plants. Like there's the kale over there. There's two kinds of moth species that like love eating your kale. You can spray the BTL on there, and it's the same kind of bacteria that'll crystallize their guts. Because not a lot of like our native insects want to eat our kale. So. Yeah. Awesome question. But so that's the stuff that we talk about in our classes.
So this is I do for aphid program.
Yep.
If you have whole bunch there, right?
Yep.
And then I make vinegar.
Yep.
Mixture of vinegar and little dish salt.
Yep.
Shake it well and then spray.
Yep.
So that might work.
No, that totally works.
Oh, that
yeah, absolutely. And there's another thing that you can use called safer soap. And so safer soap is technically an organic pesticide, where it's literally just salts that are dissolved in water, and you can spray it. And the coolest thing is you can kill the aphids, and if there's the ladybugs and those hoverflies that I was telling you about, if they're there, the safer soap, if it's a certain life stage of the of the ladybug or the hoverfly, you don't kill those, and you just kill the aphids, which is super cool. And then there's so just like the tomato hornworms with those parasitoid wasps, there's another type of parasitoid wasp that eats aphids. Oh. And so so talk about science fiction. So they eat the aphid from the inside out as well, and then the aphid turns into this like brown mummy, and then out of the aphid's butt comes the parasitoid wasp, and then it can go get more aphids. It's like, and it makes like this trap door to come out. It's crazy. Yeah, it's super cool. It's the coolest class. Yeah, it's like, it is like, yeah, hands down, the integrative pest management class is like, you just go like, what? Like the entire time. Like, how does that even work? Yeah, oh yeah, their life cycles are like nuts. But yeah, so that's like, if we let nature do its thing, that's the whole idea. because like these systems are in play, and if we encourage those systems, then that actually directly helps us. But we can intervene, like if we want to spray with the vinegar and the dish soap, or this stuff called safer soap. So.
What would you recommend to like start a native edible garden?
So come to the college and we will give you a bunch of native plants like you're going to do today. So today we have nodding onion, so that's another native edible. And so it's like super, super pungent, so use it sparingly. So you're all gonna take home a nodding onion today, a wintergreen, and then a type of grass. If you want, you take whatever you want. But there's a grass called Indian grass, and it grows like this tall, and it has a super like showy flower, yeah. And so these are like, they're this big, and so it's like one stem, but in like 2 or 3 years, it's gonna be a big bunch, and it's gonna be awesome. And so those are super showy native grasses, and a lot of the butterflies and moths and stuff, they eat grasses, and that's one of the grasses that we can grow. And they're super drought tolerant because their roots go like 30 feet down into the soil. And so like, when you think about like lawns and stuff, like lawns, they kind of look like crap now, right? Because they're actually cold tolerant grasses. Our native grasses are warm season grasses, so they thrive in the heat. And so they'll look way better than just like a lawn. And so that's why keeping a little patch of lawn is obviously nice because you can take your shoes off, walk around the grass, and it's fun. You can like set up a chair. But like on the edges, you can start growing some of these native plants. Like take away some of the lawn, and you can start growing some of these really big, showy grasses. Or the mountain mint that we have is like this tall. And so that's like another example of like a nice, showy, the flowers are really small on the mountain mint, but there's a bunch of them like at one time, and so they're kind of like a pinkish white, and those are kind of pretty.
I've seen this.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And honestly, like a lot of this stuff, like you've probably seen before, and now we're just putting it into like a different kind of context of like we can eat it, and it supports like the native insects that we do want because they directly help us in gardening.
I have a lot of mint plants around my chicken coop.
Yeah.
They told me to plant mint because mice and rats don't like the smell of mint.
Yep.
So it's a natural deterrent.
Exactly.
My problem is somehow I must have some catnip in there because my cat's getting into it and he's acting crazy.
Maybe. And yeah. And so there's actually something called cat mint, which is just like catnip, but it's slightly different, but cats really love that as well. So maybe there was that kind of snuck in.
All the roots, all the stems are square.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with this guy. So, yep. Yeah. But yeah, so that, again, that's a natural deterrent. And so you can plant the native one and it'll do the same thing.
Yeah, and the chickens won't eat mint. So.
No, exactly. Yeah, I have them around my chicken coop as well.
I've been trying to plant milkweed, and I'm good at growing anything.
Cool.
I plant it in the fall because it likes the winter.
Yeah.
It needs the freeze, but it never. I'm not doing something correctly.
Okay. Oh, man, I'm trying to think. One thing you might try to do is plant in the spring so that you're like altered what you've done and see if that works. Because what might be happening, I don't know, is maybe it's because it isn't established enough, it can't winter over. Is the guess that I'm going to intuitively, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. So maybe try to do it in the spring when they're little, and then like really kind of baby them for that summer, and then they should really establish.
Because I'd like to do the whole outside
Sweet.
of my lawn.
Yeah.
So it's like
Cool.
a perimeter.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. Yeah, so try that.
Okay.
And one thing you can do is like now, or well, in a couple weeks, the milkweed pods will be opening up and collect the seeds, and then that's one. So that's another technique we talk about is like how to sow native seeds to like as sort of like a production, because there are native plant gardens that specialize in that, and I've learned from them, and there's kind of like some tips and tricks that you can do that you get a little bit more success. But yeah, you can easily collect milkweed seeds, put them in a flat, literally leave them outside over winter, and then they'll germinate the next spring.
And you need that full sun, right?
Yep, milkweed likes full sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. So the Indian grass, the mountain mint, really like full sun, just like milkweed. The winter green that we're going to plant doesn't like full sun. It grows like in and around pine trees. So like when you walk in the forest, it stays pretty low as a ground cover, and it doesn't love a lot of sun. It actually kind of likes like just dappled sun like a forest. So if you have a shady part of your yard, you can tuck it in there. So
if I wanted to plant that mountain mint
yep,
around the perimeter of my home,
yep.
do I do it now?
You can, yeah. Yep. And so we don't have mountain mint today, but if you come by the garden, we can just try to dig some up for you. And that's what we've done before. So every semester, my students have a farmer's market, and it's really like a fundraiser for a student club called the Green Society, and we raise money for like guest speakers and having other events and stuff. But so we have a farmer's market and like plant sale every semester. And so one of the things we do is we actually use our native plant garden, like for you folks today, like a cedar garden for everybody else. So we like dig them up and transplant them into pots and then either give them away or people can like donate to us. But like just like we've done today, or you're going to do in a little bit, we also start the plants from seeds. And so that's why we have the native plant garden, because we collect milkweed seeds and the students how to like learn how to native plant, kind of winter them over and stuff like that. And same thing with the mountain mint, the Indian grass, nodding onion, and then there's a couple other grass species.
Is the nodding onion similar to the walking onion? Or not?
So it looks similar, but it's not the same thing. It doesn't, you know how the walking onion makes like a new bulb?
Yeah.
This just makes seeds. So it doesn't have the like bulb that tips it over and makes it walk. Yeah, so that one you have to grow from seed. But it also, just like the grass that we're gonna have, it slowly makes like a big bunch through time.
Oh, okay.
So, and the ones that I have for you guys today is like literally one stem, and they're like that big, and they're like little frail little buddies, so.
So should we plant those now?
Yep, you can do that, yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yep, so I think how we're gonna do it is we have pots for everybody in soil, and you can repot them because they're in plug trays, and you can repot it, and maybe after we kind of pot them today, maybe give them a little bit of time and care for them in the pot so that, like, you know, it's kind of weird to say, but like plants get stressed out. And so like when you keep ripping them out of pots, it's like a stressful thing. So like after we plant them today in the pot, keep an eye on them, maybe in like September, maybe plant them where you want in your garden.
Stay inside all winter.
Or you could keep them inside all winter. Absolutely. So, the awesome questions. You guys are great. These, like, you've asked way more questions than like my students do. So.
Hopefully you have more life experience.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, I have tons of older students. It's great. It really is. It's awesome. So, no, you guys are great. Cool.
I've taken seeds. Have you heard of the Hungarian heart tomato?
I have not.
They're the best tomato you'll ever eat.
Okay.
I've taken the seeds from them, dried them,
Yep.
let them dry naturally by themselves, and I replant them.
Yeah, cool.
But they're now coming out like cocktail tomato size
Okay, yeah.
instead of the big size that they are.
Yeah.
Because they grafted them somehow. Because I ran into that with my oxide tomatoes. They were coming out the size of papyri tomatoes the second year.
So the ox heart is very similar to the Hungarian.
And I asked ML Fidelli about it, and she told me, well, they graft them and then they take the seeds, and the second year you may get the original hardy plant, and it's not as big or as flavorful.
Yeah.
Okay.
The way I guess it
We have the seed out, basically.
a weak plant on
Yeah.
a strong one, and you have a good
Oh,
plant.
okay. I'll have to buy new seeds.
Yeah, and then there's other crazy things that can happen. Like if you have more than one type of tomato, you can have like cross-pollination between the two. It'll make like a new hybrid. And so that's like another crazy thing that'll happen.
One of my friends, Steve, he had planted, he had dug up some wild strawberries in his
Yeah.
yard, but he also had planted some strawberries that he bought at a, and they cross-pollinated.
Yeah.
Made the most, they're smaller than the strawberries that, he bought, but they're bigger than the wild strawberries.
Yeah.
They were sweet like the wild.
Oh, cool.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, one of the wild ones on the hill.
We have a lot.
Yep,
No, yeah.
cool.
But you gotta watch out on cross-pollination.
Oh, yeah.
I grow maybe 20 butternut plants,
Mm-hmm.
and my neighbor one year planted gourds.
Yep.
And some of the butternuts, you couldn't cut them.
Yeah.
They got the gourd skin.
Yep.
They look like a butternut.
Yep.
What happened? You know?
Yeah.
How can you prevent that?
So,
I had experienced that.
yeah, so each plant is different with their pollination distance requirements. So it really depends on the crop. So for example, spinach is wind pollinated, and you have to, if you wanted to like grow spinach for seed, you can't have any spinach around for like a mile, because the pollen potentially will travel a mile and like by accident land on the spinach that you have. But then there's like peas, and they really just self-pollinate, and like you can have like a bunch of different kinds of peas like in this room and they'd be fine. Yeah. So it really depends on the crop. And so gourds, those squash bees, they like to travel, and so they're cross-pollinating. And so you, like it depends on the pollinator or how they pollinate. So yeah.
You get what you get.
You get what you get, yeah. Yeah.
All a science experiment.
It is, it really is. Gardening is absolutely a science experiment, which is great. And it's kind of like, I look at it as almost art, because it's how do you want to put the plants on the landscape, and especially like, you know, do you want a bunch of grasses over here, or are you going to intersperse stuff, and like it's like a canvas. So that's another way that I like to look at it. Yeah. Yeah. We want to make some mocktails?
Let's do that.
Make some drinks? All right, cool.
All right, so don't be shy. We can create what we create. If you don't like it, we'll try it again, right? So it's not, I don't want to drop this. It's not, it's art, not science when it comes to mocktails. Who wants to get started?
I like cranberry juice.
All right, and do you want to mix it with seltzer, lemon lime, or ginger ale?
Ginger ale.
All right, do you want cranberries too?
Sure.
You want any mint?
Sure.
All right. Oh, I love you.
I take anything.
You're fabulous. Sure. All right. Let's do some of this mountain mint. It's so pretty. All right, in there. I'll grab the cranberry juice. And like I said, it's just something you mix and match. And cranberries, of course, because it's Cape Cod, right? I am making such a mess.
That's okay.
But that's okay, right? You just, woo! It's a real celebration now.
Now the party.
Splash of mint, I love it. Very good. Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. So we like our drinks fancy at our house. We'll do, you know what? We'll do cranberries and blueberries. Okay. Ooh, so fancy.
Is this your son over here?
That is my son. That's my son, Vermi. No, he's my oldest.
Oh, he's going to Clark.
Yes, yes.
Congratulations.
He is off to Clark. So we're going to do a little bit of blueberry in here. Let me just shake it up first, right? Doesn't he have the most gorgeous hair? That kid. He does. I'm not allowed to play with their hair. It was in the vows. Ginger ale, lemon lime, or seltzer. Okay. Oh, this is so pretty. So pretty. And did you want any mint with this?
No.
No? Okay. Okasa. Okay, I'd be impressed. Shane, can I make you a mocktail?
What would you suggest?
I would suggest yes.
No, I mean,
All right.
fancy,
All right. I'm going to do it then. You're welcome. Let's
Yeah.
do.
Break it up.
So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this will be a little bit of cranberry. A little bit of the blueberry. Oh. You found a friend.
Oh, yeah.
A little buddy.
Yeah. It's the exact same species I keep finding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you show Shane the camera? Get your hands dirty, because that's actually really good for our health, right? Dirty
is?
hands, dirt in the
Absolutely,
hands.
it
That's
certainly is. Yeah, hold on 1 second. We're just going to get some
Don't
water.
have dirt under your
Just 'cause this is
fingernails.
a
You're
little
not
dry.
gardening.
that's right.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it?
As long as you're not like over harvesting,
Yeah.
then it should be okay.
Okay.
And so one of the kind of rules of thumb is just to make sure that there's like at least kind of 50 to 100 individual plants themselves,
Okay.
and then taking no more than like 10%.
Okay. So 100 plants take less than 10.
Yeah.
10 or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I tried to add was rooting hormone so that each individual one, because I cut them and they're not connected anymore, will hopefully grow its own roots. There's a little bit of roots there, but just to try to coax them to grow more roots.
Okay.
So take some of the kind of like the soil that it's adapted to be in, and then you can do a little something like that. But if you want to take a couple of them, go for it. And so yeah, there you go.
Cool.
And then I usually like to give a little top off. And then
So these
a
like
little,
the shadier.
they do, yes.
Okay.
The wintergreen like the shade, and so I like to little push down, but then that should be fine. And then when you get, well, we do have the watering can. You can either water them now or when you get home, because again, like we're talking inside, like it's a stressful thing. We just ripped it out of the ground. So water them in, and that's with all the plants that we transplant. Water them in.
How much?
Yes, they are red berries, and they're just like the leaves, and you can use them in teas and stuff like that. And yes, they are edible.
Oh, that sounds pretty. What a
They're
pretty
super pretty,
tea.
and they last through like the winter. So it's really cool to have like a red thing with like snow on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, we go hiking in the, well, you know, you take the dog out and you see these beautiful
Yeah, there you go. And
green
if you
and the
wanna
red
take more than
berries.
one flood, go for
And then
it
I
as
can
well.
pull it up before my dog.
Oh, absolutely, no, no.
Right?
Take a couple of them.
Okay.
And put them in the same pot. Like take that one. Same thing with the nodding onion. Like everybody take like 2 or 3, because we have a bunch of them.
We can.
And same
Yes,
thing with
yeah.
the wintergreen. Like take a bunch of them. Like this was all for you guys.
And they'll be okay in the same pot.
Yeah, yes, they will be. And then actually now, like when you have 3 of them, when you transplant them, keep them together if you want, and then you'll have like initially like a what they call massing, where they'll be.